Hello, dear students and esteemed learners. Welcome in this second lecture on the course Sociology of Health. The topic of today's lecture is Sociology of Health, Emergence, Growth and Scope. I have divided this lecture in three parts: emergence and growth of sociology of health, so a scope of sociology of health, and sociology of health in India. In the previous lecture, we talked about an introduction of sociology of health and its subject matter and also its importance. And there we talked about medical sociology also, because sociology of health at an earlier stage was known as medical sociology. So we will get connected with where we left in the previous lecture. Now the question today that we will try to answer is this, that how sociology of health emerged as a branch or as a subdiscipline of sociology. Well, subdisciplines emerge and grow because of multiple reasons or factors such as diversification of perspectives or approaches within the discipline. Now, diversification of perspectives means within a discipline there can be multiple perspectives or approaches. When a new approach emerges or when a new perspective emerges, then there may be growth of a particular new subdiscipline. That can be one possible cause. Just like that, there can be other causes also, like growth of related institutions. For example, in our case, sociology of health emerged when in the 20th century we saw emergence of good number of health institutions and hospitals and clinics. So different factors may play an important role in the emergence of any subdiscipline. Then major global and national events can also play an important role, like the occurrence of World War, or for that matter, occurrence of some major pandemic. Recently we saw COVID. And similarly, there can be new challenges and opportunities also, which may create the situation for the emergence of a subdiscipline. We will apply this framework to understand the emergence of sociology of health. Now, I have included few important information here that you can see in the slide. Charles McIntyre noted the use of the term medical sociology as early as in 1894 in an article on the importance of social factors in health. Now, it is important to note here that the term medical sociology was used way back in 1894, and at that point of time also it was primarily referring to the social factors in health, the social factors that we are actually now talking about. Then according to Scamler, medical sociology is normally regarded as post-Second World War phenomenon and as originating in the US. So here we get an idea that this subdiscipline primarily emerged in the USA, and the time period we are also getting an idea that post Second World War, right? Now, a natural question is emerging that if sociology of health emerged in the US, then what was happening in Europe? Because sociology finds its emergence primarily in Europe, as the students of sociology are well aware of. So what was happening in Europe? In Europe, and especially in France, Germany and Britain, social aspects of health and disease had been studied within disciplines like social medicine, public health and anthropology since the late 18th century. In the previous lecture, we talked about social medicine and public health, right? Now we know that social medicine is basically a part of the medical science, and public health basically is a meeting point between social sciences and medical sciences. That means the focus on the social factors of health was also there in Europe, but the approach was a little different. It was closer to the medical sciences, whereas in US it was primarily growing within sociology. Now I have included some other important developments which took place in 20th century. First is this biomedical perspective emerged and became a dominant perspective in the late 19th and early 20th century. Then we had invention of antibiotics. Then basically several new medicines were invented. And then there was a growth of modern medical system also. That was a very important phenomenon. A crucial event occurred in 1951. What was that event? It was the publication of eminent sociologist Talcott Parsons' famous book, The Social System. And in this book, Talcott Parsons talked about many things, including hospital as a social system and sick roll. The concept of sick roll became very popular at a later stage. Parsons, who is known as a prominent functionalist, believed that illness is dysfunctional for both the individuals and the larger society. Now, this particular perspective was very important because prior to this, illness was generally considered as something related to an individual phenomenon. However, Parsons tried to see it as a collective phenomenon or a societal phenomenon. Later on, he talked about some kind of social abnormality, and there are so many other things. We will not talk about these things at length here because we have included one important topic as functionalist perspective, and there we will study the contribution made by Parsons. But it will be important to know that in 1950s, Parsons made a very important contribution. And gradually, the Marxists responded to the approach developed by the functionalist about this institution of medicine, right? The Marxists argued that disease is the outcome of a capitalist economic system. And here I would like to talk about the famous book authored by Marx's friend Engels. The name of the book is The Condition of Working Class in England in 1844. Now this book became very popular, and it helped in basically articulating the Marxist argument in the context of disease and medicine. Then one important thing also happened just after a few years, and that was basically the arrival of the very popular and famous book, The Birth of the Clinic, authored by eminent social philosopher Foucault. Now, in this book, there was an attempt to analyze medical knowledge as a product of a specific historical period. Now, Foucault is a very famous philosopher that you all already know. He has talked about several concepts, and his concepts help us to understand the complexities existing in contemporary societies. Now, his central argument in this context was that modern medicine is a manifestation of an administered society in which the centralization of information about citizens is essential for social planning. I will not talk much about Foucault's contribution here because then we will go out of context. But the point that I am mentioning here is this, that there was important contribution by functionalist school of sociology, then Marxist school of sociology, and simultaneously contribution made by philosophers like Foucault. Then there are other people also, and they all tried to give sociological theories in the domain of health and medicine. And this is how basically medicine, illness, sickness and disease find an important place within the discipline of sociology. And this is how we find emergence of sociology of health within the larger discipline of sociology. I hope you got this point very well. Then we talk about a very important concept given by Robert Strauss. Robert Strauss suggested that medical sociology could be divided into two separate but closely interrelated areas, sociology of medicine and sociology in medicine. We will not talk much about this, but you can read the information that I have already included in the slide. You will get an idea. I would like to say that sociology of medicine primarily tries to look at the health and medical institutions from sociological lens. The sociologist of medicine is a person who is primarily sociologist and who is working in the departments of sociology. On the other hand, sociology in medicine is something where sociologists try to help the medical professionals and the patients directly within the medical or clinical setup. This way, we can say that medical sociology and then sociology of medicine and also sociology in medicine, all these different branches of or subdisciplines of sociology started to focus on health, medicine, illness, sickness and disease related phenomenon. Now, since all these branches were primarily getting governed by the common sociological theories and perspectives, they were not really different from each other, and over a period of time, all these branches of sociology were getting one common identity, and that common identity is generally understood as sociology of health. Although in some countries this is still known as medical sociology, and in some countries this is still known as sociology of health and medicine or sociology of health and illness. And this you can see in the titles of various authors also. So now we have completed the first part, that is emergence and growth of sociology of health. Now we come to the next part, that is scope of sociology of health. Well, yesterday we talked about importance of sociology of health, and there we discussed many important things related to the subject matter of sociology of health and why those are considered very important in contemporary society. Now, the scope of sociology of health is to some extent related to those aspects also. We will include some new points here. But the basic question here is, what do we mean by a scope? So when we try to understand the scope of a particular discipline, then we try to see that what are the future prospects of that discipline, or what are the future problems which may emerge that this particular discipline can try to settle or understand, right? So from that point of view, I have included few important points here for understanding the scope of sociology of health. In the contemporary world, we are witnessing that there are emerging public health issues. Now, public health is again a very big and broader topic. We'll talk about it at a later stage at length, but as of now, I can say that it is basically trying to include all possible determinants and factors which influence the domain of health. So whether you talk about the social determinants or you talk about the biomedical determinants, public health includes almost all those determinants. And because of the fast changing nature of the society, the domain of public health is changing or it's emerging, right? And so in future, the concept of public health will keep on evolving, and with that, the notion of health will also keep on changing, and sociology of health will be very helpful in understanding those things at length. Then there will be issue of the lifestyle disease. Lifestyle is always changing with the material changes taking place in the society, and as a result of that, certain lifestyle diseases are also getting caused, and it will be important responsibility of sociology of health to help in mitigating those emerging disease kind of thing. Then increasing intervention of machine and technology with the body and mind, like cloning, plastic surgery, sex change, medicalization, transplant surgery, artificial organs, ventilator assistance. All these things are actually changing the life courses of human beings. And various situations are emerging that we need to address, and sociology of health can be very helpful because all these things actually influence the human behavior, and we have already discussed that sociology intends to understand human behavior in the various changing circumstances. Now we can also talk about the emerging practices of surrogacy or hiring a womb or live-in relations. Don't you think these things will change the basic structure of some of the institutions like family or marriage? And because of the involvement of the health related domains in these particular practices, the concern for sociology of health will remain. And then there is a tremendous growth of medical profession these days, and we are witnessing that there is some kind of stratification and hierarchy is emerging within the medical profession. Now, the medical professionals are not trained to study the problems of stratification and hierarchy, but the sociologists are trained in that. So that way, sociologists can help in understanding the new types of hierarchy or stratification or inequality that may emerge even within the medical profession. Then health governance is becoming a very important issue, and the involvement and engagement of the government with the citizens will be there. Then there are issues related to entitlement and rights. Then there are very important and very serious issues related to disability and impairment. Sociology of health can play a very crucial role in resolving many of these problems. And then I have already included few other points, some of which we have discussed in the previous lecture also, like health inequalities and inequities. So you have already an idea about these things. 2-3 important things I would like to discuss or add here. One is related to increasing life expectancy. See, world over, life expectancy is increasing. But along with that, the population of the elderly is also increasing, and for that basically the need of the medical care is also increasing. There is a concept of palliative care, right? Because sometimes when disease become irrecoverable, then the target of or the goal of medical care in those situations is to minimize the pain, and for that some kind of human care is very important. And so the engagement of humans with the health practices will continue to remain there. We can speak about several other things, but I will close this particular session here only because we are not left with much time for this lecture. Now I come to the third part or segment of this lecture, which is sociology of health in India. We have already discussed basically the emergence and scope. So whatever we have studied in emergence and scope, that is also applicable in case of India. But in this segment or part, we will briefly try to see that which trajectory actually sociology of health took in India. There are few important references here. I'll talk about these references and you can also read these things from these slides. Now, Anita Minocha wrote a trend report in 1974 entitled Sociology of Medicine, a Trend Report, as part of an ICSSR project. Now, this trend report basically gives important information about the state of sociology of health in India, primarily in the decades of 1950s, 60s and around that. Minocha presented a selective bibliography of most of the works accessible to her without making any distinction between sociological and anthropological writings. But the problem with this trend report is this, that she has not differentiated between sociological and anthropological writings. So whichever works got listed, some of those were basically sociological and some of those were anthropological. Then later on, S.R. Mehta provided an account of growth of sociology of health and medical care in India, including more recent works available then. And Mehta's contribution came basically in the year 1982. So we got an update way back in 1974 and then in 1982. And then very recently, Madhu Nagla prepared a comprehensive report on the state of the subdiscipline of sociology of health and medicine as part of the fifth round of the ICSSR trend report, and provided a detailed account of most of the works published during the first decade of this century. Right? Akram has made an important contribution in identifying sociology of health as an important subdiscipline of sociology and proposed multiple phases of growth of sociology of health in India, and also identified the specific themes that emerged within sociology of health in Indian context. So very briefly, we will take an overview of those four stages. The first phase, it started after independence of India and continued till imposition of political emergency. The second phase started after the Alma Ata Declaration of 1978 and continued till establishment of NACO, that is National AIDS Control Organization, in 1992. Now you will understand the importance of these dates or these periods during the discussion in the forthcoming lectures. We will not talk much about these things as of now because we have not discussed the kind of research which actually took place in India in the domain of sociology of health. As of now, I'm just giving you a brief idea. The third phase started with onslaught of HIV/AIDS and establishment of NACO in 1992 and continued till 2019, that is before the outbreak of COVID-19. And as of now, we can talk about a fourth phase which started in 2020, that is with the arrival of COVID and basically the COVID and post-COVID-19 phase, right? And as of now, sociologists are basically trying to understand what kind of changes have taken place in the health domain, or you can say in the illness behavior, sickness behavior, and health seeking behavior of people. Now, COVID has influenced the world very seriously, and we have seen very serious impact in India. And I would like to add here that COVID, being a communicable disease and a very serious challenge to the global community, could not have been properly understood without the intervention made by the social scientists, right? So, almost all social sciences played very important role, and sociology of health definitely played an important role in understanding the kind of complications which emerged because of COVID-19. So, I can conclude this session by saying this, that sociology of health has a specific position within the larger discipline of sociology. It's emerging, it's growing, it's getting more and more acceptance and popularity, and most importantly, it has tremendous potential to resolve some of the future challenges. Now, before we close, I have two small things. Think about this. How can you differentiate between social medicine and sociology of health? This is a problem statement, and I recommend all of you to devote some time and think about this problem. And then I have an activity question also. I recommend all undergraduate and postgraduate level students to write the answer of this question, and the question is very simple. Write a note on the various health issues that people witnessed during COVID-19, because we all have witnessed this very recently. We have observed several things, and you may notice that I recommend the undergraduate and postgraduate level students to write something on the basis of their empirical observation. So, with that note, I come to the final slide, that is about the references. So, whatever references I have used in this presentation, I have mentioned all these things. If you are interested in understanding any of the topics at length, you can go and study any of these books. Thank you very much. We will meet in the next lecture. Till then, take care. Bye.